transport ship shook as it passed through the station's energy barrier. Park Do-yeon pressed his face against the small window and watched as the biggest structure he had ever seen came into view. Station Velo 7 was a massive ring floating in space, covered with lights and towers and landing pads. Ships of all sizes moved around it like insects around a hive. This was the home of the Galactic Combat Academy, the most famous fighting school in the known universe. Do-yeon was 17 years old. He was thin, not very tall, and had the kind of face that made people think he was younger than he was. His black hair was cut short, and his dark eyes watched everything with a quiet focus. He wore simple clothes that looked old compared to the advanced fabrics other passengers wore. In his lap, he held a bag made of rough cloth. It contained everything he owned. The other passengers on the transport had stopped talking to him after the first day of the journey. When they learned he was human, going to the academy, they had laughed. Some had even felt sorry for him, which was worse than the laughter. Humans were known across the galaxy as one of the weakest intelligent species. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no armor or venom or telepathy. They were soft, slow, and fragile. The fact that a human had been accepted to the Combat Academy was seen as a joke, a political gesture to make Earth feel included. Do-yeon did not care what they thought. He had not come here to make friends or to prove anything to strangers. He had come because his grandmother had asked him to. The memory of their last conversation played in his mind as the transport began its landing sequence. They had been sitting in the small training room behind their house in Busan. The room smelled of old wood and sweat, the same way it had smelled for 9 generations of their family. His grandmother, Park Yoon-ji, was 83 years old but still moved like water when she demonstrated techniques. She had given him the wooden practice sword that now rested in his bag. It was called a mokjum, and it had been in their family for over 200 years. The wood was dark and smooth from countless hands holding it. "The galaxy does not know what humans can do," his grandmother had said. "They see our soft skin and think we are weak. They do not know that we spent 1,000,000 years fighting things with claws and teeth and strength greater than ours. They do not know that we turned our weakness into something else." "What did we turn it into, grandmother?" Do-yeon had asked. She had smiled, and in that smile was something sharp and ancient. Patience, precision, the understanding that a small thing placed correctly can break a large thing. "They will learn, Do-yeon. You will teach them." Now, as the transport doors opened and he stepped onto the station, Do-yeon held those words close to his heart. The academy's main entrance was a massive archway carved from some kind of blue stone. Students and instructors moved through it in groups, and Do-yeon saw more alien species in 1 minute than he had seen in his entire life on Earth. There were the Croxans, huge reptilian beings with forearms and scales like armor. There were the Velith, insect-like creatures that clicked and buzzed when they communicated. There were beings made of light, beings made of stone, beings that floated without legs, and then there was him, a small human with a cloth bag. The stares started immediately. Some aliens stopped walking just to look at him. Others pointed and made sounds that he assumed were laughter in their languages. A group of young Croxans blocked his path as he tried to follow the signs to the registration area. "Lost little mammal?" the largest one asked. His translator device turned the growling words into flat, emotionless speech. "The pet section is on the lower levels." His friends found this very funny. Do-yeon looked up at the Croxan, who was nearly 3 times his height. He said nothing. After a moment, he simply walked around them and continued on his way. "It does not even have the courage to respond," one of them called after him. "Typical human." Do-yeon kept walking. Da! His grandmother had taught him that words were wind. Only actions had weight. The registration process took several hours. He was measured, scanned, tested, and documented. The administrators seemed surprised that he had actually shown up. His acceptance had been processed through Earth's planetary lottery, a system the Galactic Council had created to give developing species a chance to participate in galactic institutions. The chances of being selected were millions to 1. Most lottery winners from primitive planets declined the opportunity out of fear. Doyen had not declined. His assigned living quarters were in the eastern section of the academy, in a building reserved for junior students. His room was small but clean, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a window that looked out at the stars. His roommate was already there when he arrived. The roommate was a Soren, a species of reptilian humanoids known for their discipline and their skill with bladed weapons. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes watched Doyen with clear distaste as the human entered. "I am Callus," the Soren said. "I requested a single room, but they said none were available. I assume you are the human." "Park Doyen," Doyen replied, bowing slightly in the way his culture taught. Callus did not return the gesture. He turned back to the long knife he was cleaning. "You should know that I have no interest in whatever humans do for social bonding. I am here to train, to improve, and to bring honor to my clan. You will stay on your side of the room. You will not touch my belongings. You will not speak to me unless necessary." Doyen nodded and began unpacking his bag. "One more thing," Callus added without looking up. "You will not last. Humans never do." The last one stayed for 6 days before requesting emergency transport home. The one before that lasted for days. They say one human actually made it 3 weeks before a training accident broke half his bones. He paused. "I give you 5 days." Doyen placed his grandmother's mockgem on his desk, handling it with care. Callus glanced at it and made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You brought a stick? A wooden stick to a school that trains warriors with plasma weapons and energy blades?" "It belonged to my grandmother," Doyen said. "Then it belongs in a museum. Or a fire?" Doyen did not respond. He finished unpacking in silence, then lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the window, unfamiliar stars burned in unfamiliar patterns. He was further from home than any member of his family had ever been. But the forms his grandmother taught him worked the same here as they did on Earth. The principles of balance and movement did not change because he was in space. The thousands of hours he had spent training did not disappear because aliens laughed at him. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Tomorrow, he would enter the training halls, where warriors from across the galaxy learned to fight and kill. Tomorrow, he would face beings that could crush him with one hand, beings that could move faster. Then his eyes could track beings that had been bred for combat for thousands of generations. Tomorrow, they would see a small human and think he was nothing. Doyen closed his eyes and let his breathing slow, entering the meditative state his grandmother had taught him. Before he could walk, they could think whatever they wanted. He would show them the truth when the time was right. The first week at the academy nearly destroyed Park Duhain. Each day began before the station's artificial sun rose. The students gathered in the main training hall, a massive space that could hold thousands of beings. The floors were made of some material that could absorb impacts, and the walls were lined with weapons from 100 different worlds. Instructors walked among the students like giants among children, watching everything, saying little. The physical conditioning was designed to push every species to their limits. For the Croxans, this meant lifting gravity slabs that weighed as much as small vehicles. For the Velith, it meant speed drills that turned them into blurs of motion. For the Sorens, it meant blade work so fast that the air itself seemed to scream. For Doyen, meant survival. While others lifted massive weights, he struggled with objects that they would consider toys. During running exercises, the Velith students completed the course 3 times before he finished once. His body, designed by evolution for a planet with lighter gravity and gentler conditions, screamed in protest at every exercise. But he did not stop. He did not complain. He did not ask for modifications or easier tasks. When the other students went to eat their midday meal, Doyen stayed in the training hall. When they went to sleep, he practiced in the empty courtyard outside the dormitory building. His body was covered in bruises. His muscles ached with a deep, constant pain. But every night, under alien stars, he moved through the forms his grandmother had taught him. The forms had names that went back centuries: water flowing over stone, wind through empty branches. The crane stands in still water. They looked like dances to anyone watching. slow and gentle movements that seemed to have no purpose. But Do-Yan knew what they really were. Each form was a library of techniques, encoded in movement passed down through generations of his family. His grandmother had told him that their art was different from other fighting styles. It was not about strength or speed. It was about understanding. Understanding how bodies moved. Understanding where force could be applied to create the greatest effect. Understanding that every creature, no matter how powerful, had weaknesses built into its design. The Croxans have 4 arms, she had said during one of their training sessions years ago. But for arms means for shoulders, for joints that can be locked, for points where nerves come close to the surface. She had shown him diagrams of alien bodies, obtained from sources she never explained. The Academy was not the first contact between humans and the galaxy. There had been quiet meetings, secret exchanges of information, preparations that most of Earth did not know about. Do-Yan's family had been part of those preparations for 3 generations. "We are small," his grandmother had said, "but small can go where large cannot. We are weak, but weakness teaches us to use what we have with perfect efficiency. They will underestimate you, Do-Yan. That is their gift to you. Accept it with gratitude." Now at the Academy, Do-Yan accepted many gifts of underestimation. The worst came from a Croxan named Torak. Torak was the son of a high general in the Croxan military. His family was wealthy and powerful, and he had been raised from birth to be a warrior. He stood taller than most of his species, and his scales were a deep red color that indicated royal blood. He had been the junior champion of the Academy for 3 consecutive cycles, a record that no one had ever matched. He had also put 16 students in the medical center. None of them had returned to the Academy. Torak noticed Do-Yan on the 3rd day and decided that the human would be his entertainment. "Little mammal," he called out during morning assembly, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I heard your species evolved from animals that lived in trees. Is that why you climb so poorly? Perhaps you have forgotten your own nature." Laughter spread through the crowd. Do-Yan stood still and said nothing. "I also heard that humans keep other animals as pets. They feed them and care for them and let them sleep in their homes. How strange. On my world, we eat the weak. We do not adopt them." More laughter. Do-Yan's face remained calm. This became a daily ritual. Torak would find him before training, during meals, after classes. The insults grew more creative and more cruel. Sometimes Torak would accidentally knock Do-Yan's food to the ground. Sometimes he would trip the human in the corridors, sending him sprawling in front of dozens of watching students. The other students learned to stay away from Do-Yan. Being seen with the human meant becoming a target. Even Callus, who had initially been merely cold, now seemed almost sympathetic in comparison to the isolation Do-Yan experienced. "Why do you not fight back?" Callus asked one night, breaking his own rule about unnecessary conversation. "You let him humiliate you every day. Do humans have no pride?" Do-Yan was sitting on his bed, carefully wrapping his hands with strips of cloth. It was something he did every night before his secret practice sessions. "There is a saying on my world. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. And you choose to be a flat nail. To hide yourself? I choose to wait." Callus made a disgusted sound. "Wait for what? Until he kills you." Torak has crippled students for less than the insults he gives you daily. His family protects him from any punishment. He is untouchable. Do-Yan finished wrapping his hands and flexed his fingers, testing the tightness. "My grandmother taught me that patience is not weakness. It is the foundation of strategy. A river is patient. It does not fight the mountain. It simply flows around it year after year, until one day the mountain is gone, and only the river remains." Pretty words. "They will not stop for Croxan arms from breaking your spine." No, Do-Yan agreed. "They will not. But understanding will." Callus shook his head and returned to his blade maintenance. He had decided that the human was either deeply wise or completely insane. He was not sure which. 2 weeks after Do-Yan's arrival, Torak made his final move. It was during the weekly assembly, when all students gathered to hear announcements from the Academy Masters. Master Vorin, the legendary head instructor, was present. He was a being made of living crystal, his form constantly shifting with patterns of light that reflected his thoughts. He had trained warriors for over 300 years. "Have a request," Torak announced, stepping forward before the assembly could be dismissed. "I wish to issue a formal challenge." The hall fell silent. Formal challenges were rare. They were bound by Academy law and could not be refused without loss of honor. They were also broadcast across the galactic network, watched by billions. "I challenge the human Park Do-Yan of Earth to a demonstration match." Whispers erupted through the crowd. Master Voron's crystalline form flickered. "A demonstration match requires both parties to accept. By Academy law, a challenge from a ranked student to an unranked student cannot be refused," Torak said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "The human has no rank. I am the junior champion. He must accept or forfeit his place at the Academy." All eyes turned to Dogen, standing alone in the middle of the crowd. He thought of his grandmother. He thought of 9 generations of training. He thought of all the hours spent learning the weak points of alien bodies, the pressure points, the nerve clusters, the places where even the strongest armor had gaps. "I accept," he said. Torak's smile showed rows of sharp teeth. "Then in 3 days, the galaxy will watch me teach the humans their proper place." As the assembly dispersed, Doyen felt something he had not felt since leaving Earth. He felt ready. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the challenge being announced, the story was everywhere. Networks that usually covered wars and political crises made time for this strange event. A human had been challenged to formal combat at the most prestigious fighting academy in known space. Everyone knew how it would end. The betting markets opened immediately. The odds were so heavily against Do-Yun that most systems would not even accept wagers on his victory. One gambling station in the outer sectors offered 10,000 to 1 odds for anyone foolish enough to bet on the human. There were no takers. Commentary filled the networks. Experts in xenobiology explained why humans were unsuited for combat. Military analysts discussed Torak's previous victories, showing footage of opponents being broken by his 4 powerful arms. Cultural commentators wondered why Earth had sent such a weak representative, and what this said about human intelligence as a species. On Earth, the reaction was different. The match had been announced during nighttime in most Asian regions, but by morning, everyone knew. Park Do-Yan became the most searched name in the planet's history. Reporters surrounded his family home in Busan, hoping to speak with his parents or his grandmother. Park Yoon-ji, 83 years old, gave one statement to the cameras. She stood in front of her house, small and frail-looking, and spoke in a voice that carried no doubt. "My grandson will not disappoint our family," she said. "He has trained since he could walk. He carries the knowledge of 9 generations. The galaxy thinks they know what humans are. They are about to learn how wrong they are." Then she went back inside and refused all other requests. At the academy, Doyen experienced a strange kind of isolation. Before, students had avoided him because he was weak and associated with failure. Now they avoided him because he was marked for destruction. Being near him felt like being near someone already dead. The 3 days before the match passed slowly. Doyen maintained his routine. He attended training sessions, though other students kept their distance. He ate his meals alone. He practiced his forms in the courtyard at night, though now he sometimes noticed others watching from windows and doorways. On the second night, Callus spoke to him again. "I have been researching human combat methods," the Sorin said. "Your species has an interesting history." "Many wars?" "Much violence against each other." Doyen continued his stretching exercises. "Yes. We fought each other for thousands of years before we discovered we were not alone in the universe. The records show that humans developed hundreds of different fighting systems. Some focused on weapons, some on bare hands, some on controlling opponents without causing harm." Callus paused. "Which system do you practice?" "My family's art has no name that translates well. The closest word in your language might be something like flowing resistance or soft power. It is very old. Very refined. Can it defeat a Croxan champion?" Doyen moved into a stance that looked like he was about to fall over but somehow remained perfectly balanced. Every body has a design. Every design has limitations. Every limitation creates opportunity. Callus watched him for a long moment. You are either the bravest being I have ever met or the most deluded. I cannot tell which. Perhaps both, Do-Yan said, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, he smiled. The night before the match, Do-Yan could not sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. He thought about his grandmother's hands guiding his when he was 5 years old, teaching him how to fall without getting hurt. He thought about the summer he turned 12, when she had increased his training to 6 hours a day and he had cried from exhaustion. Every night he thought about the diagrams she had shown him of alien bodies, the careful study of weakness points that had been gathered over 3 generations of secret preparation. Humanity had known about the galactic community for nearly a century before making official contact. In that time, certain families had been preparing. His grandmother had called it humanity's hidden sword. The galaxy sees our scientists, our diplomats, our artists, she had told him. They do not see our warriors. They think we have forgotten how to fight because we no longer fight each other as much as we once did. They are wrong. We have not forgotten. We have simply been waiting. Waiting for what? Do-Yan had asked, for the right moment to remind them who we are. In the morning, Do-Yan rose before the artificial sun. He washed himself carefully, taking his time. He ate a small meal of simple foods that would not slow his digestion. He dressed in the plain training clothes provided by the academy and wrapped his hands with the cloth, strips his grandmother had given him. The walk to the grand training hall felt like the longest journey of his life. Students lined the corridors, watching him pass. None of them spoke. Their eyes held many emotions: pity, curiosity, anticipation. They were waiting to see him. Destroyed, the Grand Training Hall was the largest space in the Academy, capable of holding 10,000 beings. Today, every seat was filled. Croxans, Velith, Sorens, and dozens of other species packed the viewing areas. Above them, hovering drones captured footage that would be broadcast to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Torak was already in the arena. The Croxan champion was performing for the crowd, his forearms raised in victory before the fight had even begun. His scales gleamed under the lights. His supporters chanted his name, a thunderous sound that shook the air itself. Do-Yan walked to his designated starting position, a small circle painted on the arena floor. He stood still and focused on his breathing. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. Out through the mouth for 4 counts. The technique calmed his heart rate and cleared his mind. High above the arena, in a private observation room, Master Vorin watched the scene below. The crystalline being had witnessed thousands of matches over 300 years. He had seen champions rise and fall. He had seen unbeatable fighters meet their end against unexpected opponents. There was something about the human that interested him. Something in the way the small creature stood perfectly still while chaos swirled around him. Most beings facing death showed fear in their bodies, even when their faces remained calm. This human showed nothing. Not fear, not bravado. Just a quiet readiness that Master Vorin had only seen in true masters of combat. On the arena floor, Do-Yan closed his eyes for one moment. He thought of his grandmother. He thought of the wooden practice sword that had traveled across the galaxy with him. He thought of every hour, every day, every year of training that had shaped him into what he was. Then he opened his eyes and looked at Torak. The Croxan was massive. His forearms were thick with muscle. His claws could tear through metal. His speed, despite his size, was legendary. None of that mattered. Do-Yan had not come here to survive. He had not come here to make a good showing or to prove that humans could take a beating. He had come here to win. The referee, neutral being of ancient lineage, moved to the center of the arena. Its voice, amplified by technology, reached every corner of the hall and every viewer across the galaxy. This is a formal demonstration match between Torak of the Croxan Empire, junior champion of the Academy, and Park Do-Yoon of Earth. The match will continue until one fighter is unable to continue or surrenders. Lethal force is prohibited, but accidents are understood to occur. Do both fighters understand? I understand, Torak growled. The human will soon understand as well. With my fists. I understand, Doyan said. His voice was quiet but steady. Then let all observers witness. Let the match be recorded for history. Let the fighters bring honor to their peoples and their worlds. The referee moved to the edge of the arena. Torak dropped into his fighting stance. All four arms raised like a wall of destruction. Doyan simply stood. His arms at his sides, his weight centered, his eyes locked on his opponent. The galaxy held its breath. Begin. The word begin had barely finished echoing through the arena when Torak attacked. He was fast, faster than anything his size had any right to be. His forearms moved in a pattern designed to overwhelm opponents, striking from multiple angles at once. It was the same attack that had put 16 students in the medical center. It was the attack that no one had ever avoided. Doyan was not there when the fists arrived. He had moved before Torak's muscles had fully committed to the strike. It was not speed in the way most beings understood speed. It was something else, something his grandmother called reading the intention. Every movement begins in the mind before it begins in the body. The eyes shift. The weight transfers. The breath changes. For someone trained to see these things, the attack announced itself before it happened. So when Torak's four fists crashed into empty air, Doyan was already 2 meters to the right, standing in that same relaxed posture, arms still at his sides. The crowd made a sound like a wave hitting rocks. Not quite a gasp, not quite a murmur, just a collective intake of breath from thousands of throats. Torak turned, his eyes narrowing. This was unexpected but not concerning. Sometimes opponents got lucky. Sometimes they dodged the first attack. None of them had ever dodged the second. He attacked again, faster this time, combining strikes with sweeping kicks that could shatter stone. His claws extended, adding deadly edges to every blow. The air itself seemed to scream as his limbs cut through it. Doyan moved like smoke. There was no violent dodging, no desperate leaping away. He simply flowed around the attacks, his body tracing paths that seemed impossible. He moved between Torak's arms like water moving through fingers. He stepped around, kicks with margins so thin that the wind from them moved his hair. 4 seconds had passed. Torak had thrown 17 strikes. None of them had come close to touching the human. The crowd was no longer making sounds. They were silent, every eye fixed on the arena, trying to understand what they were seeing. This was not how fights against humans were supposed to go. Humans were supposed to stand there and take damage until they could not stand anymore. They were not supposed to move like this. Torak felt something he had never felt in combat before. Confusion. This small creature was making him look foolish. Every attack missed. Every combination failed. It was like trying to catch fog with his hands, he roared. A sound that came from deep in his chest and threw himself at the human with everything he had. No technique now, just overwhelming force and speed. His body became a weapon. All 4 arms and both legs working together in a storm of violence. The human stepped into the storm. Doyan moved forward instead of away. Should have been suicide. But his angle was precise, calculated to pass through the one gap in Torak's attack pattern. For just a moment, he was inside the Croxon's guard. Closer than any opponent had ever been, his right hand touched Torak's primary shoulder. It was not a punch. It was not even what most beings would call a strike. It was a touch. 2 fingers pressing into a specific point where nerve fibers came close to the surface. Torak's right arms went limp. The Croxon had time to feel shock. Genuine shock, before the human moved again. Another touch, this time to a point behind his left knee. His leg buckled. A third touch to the side of his neck. And his vision blurred for a moment. 8 seconds had passed. Torak stumbled, trying to recover, trying to understand what was happening to his body. His 2 left arms still worked. He could still fight. He swung wildly at the space where the human should have been. Doyan was already behind him. The human's movements had a quality that was almost beautiful. Economy of motion, his grandmother would have called it. Nothing wasted. Every step and turn served multiple purposes. He looked like a dancer moving through a choreographed routine, except his partner was a 3-meter killing machine trying to end his life. Touched to the secondary respiratory node under the ribs. Toric's breathing became labored, touched to the nerve cluster between the shoulder blades. His left arms began to weaken. Touched to the pressure point at the base of the skull. His vision narrowed. 11 seconds had passed. Torak was swaying now, his massive body betraying him. He tried to speak, to call for the match to be stopped, but his voice would not work properly. The human had done something to the nerves that controlled his throat. He could only make a weak, confused sound. The crowd watched in absolute silence. Across the galaxy, billions of viewers stared at their screens, unable to process what they were seeing. The undefeatable champion of the Academy, the son of a Croxan High General, was being taken apart by a human teenager. Not through superior strength. Not through superior speed. Through something else entirely. Through knowledge. Doyan stood in front of Torak now, facing him directly. The Croxan's eyes, still capable of seeing, showed something they had never shown before. Fear. Real fear. The fear of a predator realizing it had become prey. The human placed his palm on Torak's chest, directly over the primary heart. It was a technique passed down through Dojan's family for 6 generations. Ever since his ancestor had first developed it based on ancient principles. His grandmother called it the breaking wave. It did not strike with external force. It sent vibration into the body, targeting the natural rhythm of the internal organs. The effect was immediate. Torak's body, already weakened by the previous touches, lost all coordination at once. His legs gave out. His arms fell to his sides. He collapsed like a building losing its foundation, all 3 meters of him crashing to the arena floor. He was conscious. He could see and hear and think, but he could not move a single muscle. The paralysis would fade in about an hour, leaving no permanent damage. Doyan had been very precise about that. 13 seconds had passed since the match began. The referee moved forward, checked Torik's condition, and then turned to face the observation platforms above.
Ow.
The match is concluded. Torak is unable to continue. Victory belongs to Park Doyan of Earth. The words echoed through the silent hall. No one moved. No one spoke. The moment stretched out like something frozen in time. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single being began to make the sound their species used to show respect for a warrior. Another joined. Then another. Within moments, the entire hall was filled with the sounds of thousands of beings honoring a victor. Different species had different ways of showing respect, and all of them were happening at once. Croxan struck their fists against their chests. Velith clicked their mandibles in rapid patterns. Sorens exposed their throats. Beings of light pulsed in synchronized rhythms. Doyan stood in the center of it all, breathing slowly, his face showing no emotion. High above, Master Voran's crystalline form blazed with light. In 300 years of watching matches, the ancient being had never seen anything like what had just happened. The human had not fought the Croxan. He had dismantled him. Every touch had been placed with surgical precision, targeting weaknesses that most beings did not even know existed. This was not the victory of a lucky amateur. This was the demonstration of a master. Voran opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council. Flagged with the highest priority. "We need to discuss Earth," the message said. Immediately. On the arena floor, Doyan finally moved. He walked slowly to where Torak lay, looking up at him with paralyzed eyes. The human knelt down so his face was level with the fallen champions. "I could have killed you 7 times during our fight," Doyan said quietly, speaking words meant only for Torak. "I chose not to. That is also part of what my people have learned. Mercy is not weakness. It is the greatest show of strength." He stood and walked toward the arena exit. The crowd parted before him, beings who had mocked him for weeks now stepping aside with something like reverence in their eyes. 13 seconds had changed everything. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The hours following the match were chaos across the galaxy. Communication networks overloaded. As billions of beings tried to access footage of the fight at the same time, military leaders demanded immediate briefings on human combat capabilities. Scientists argued about whether what they had seen was possible or some kind of elaborate trick. Political analysts warned that the balance of power in the galaxy might have shifted in 13 seconds. On Earth, celebration erupted. In South Korea, people flooded into the streets of Seoul, Busan, and every other city. Doyen's family home was surrounded by crowds singing and waving flags. His grandmother, Park Yoonji, watched the celebrations from her window and allowed herself a small smile. 9 generations, she said softly. We have waited 9 generations for this moment. At the academy, the aftermath was more complicated. Torik's paralysis had faded after an hour, exactly as Doyon had intended. The Croxon champion had been examined by medical staff and found to have no lasting injuries. But the damage to his pride and reputation was permanent. His father, the High General, demanded that Doyon be expelled for using illegal techniques. The Academy refused. Every moment of the match had been recorded from multiple angles. Every touch the human had made was analyzed by experts. Nothing he had done was against the rules. He had simply been better. Much better. Dojen returned to his room after the match to find Kalas waiting for him. The Soren stood in the center of the small space, his posture different than it had ever been before. There was no arrogance in his stance now, no dismissiveness. I watched the match, Kalas said. I have watched it 17 times since it ended. I still do not fully understand what you did. Doyen sat on his bed, suddenly feeling very tired. The energy that had carried him through the fight was fading now. I exploited weaknesses in his body's design. Every species has them. Croxons have more than most because they evolve for strength instead of versatility. Those techniques you used, the touches that disabled his limbs, where did you learn them? My family has been developing them for over 200 years. We studied every species we could find information about. We mapped nerve points, pressure locations, structural weaknesses. We created techniques specific to each species. Doyon paused. Earth has known about the galactic community for longer than most people realize. Some of us have been preparing. Kalas was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked Doyon more than anything that had happened since he arrived at the academy. The Soren lowered his head and exposed his throat, the gesture his species reserved for warriors they considered superior. I insulted you when you arrived, Kalas said. I dismissed you as weak and worthless. I was wrong. I would be honored to train beside you if you would accept my company. Doyen looked at the Soren, seeing him clearly for the first time. Behind the cold exterior was a being who simply wanted to improve, to become stronger, to bring honor to his family. They were not so different. I would like that, Diane said. Perhaps I can show you some techniques that work on Croxons, in case you ever need them. Kalas made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was the first time Doyon had heard him express any positive emotion. 3 days after the match, Doyon was summoned to Master Voron's private chamber. It was a room he had never seen before, high in one of the Academy's towers. The walls were made of the same crystalline material as Voron's body, and they pulsed with gentle light. The ancient being stood at a window that looked out over the entire station. When Doyon entered, Voron did not turn around. I have been teaching warriors for 347 years, Voron said. I have seen prodigies and geniuses. I have seen natural talents that seem touched by the universe itself. But I have never seen anything like what you did in that arena. Doyon stood in respectful silence, waiting. The techniques you used are not in any database we have access to. They are not taught by any school we know of. They appear to be entirely developed by your species, specifically to counter the combat capabilities of others. Yes, Master Voron. How long has Earth been preparing for this? Doyen considered how much to reveal. His grandmother had always taught him that secrets were valuable and should not be given away freely. But Master Voron was not an enemy, and some truths were meant to be shared. My family has been training for 9 generations, he said, but we are not the only family. There are others across Earth, different styles, different approaches, but all with the same purpose: to be ready. Ready for what? For the day when the galaxy would try to hurt us. For the day when we would need to defend ourselves. Doyan looked at the crystalline being directly. Humans have been preyed before, Master Vorin. Long ago, before we built cities or invented tools, we were hunted by everything. We survived by learning, by adapting, by refusing to give up. The galaxy thought we had forgotten those instincts because we live in comfort now. We have not forgotten. We have just been waiting. Vorin turned to face him. The light within the Master's body shifted through colors that Doyan could not name. The Galactic Council has asked me for a recommendation regarding Earth's classification. Currently, your world is listed as a developing species, protected but not respected. They want to know if this classification should change. What will you tell them? I will tell them the truth, that humans are not what we thought they were, that your species has been quietly preparing for galactic contact in ways we did not anticipate, that the soft, weak creatures we dismissed as barely sentient have developed combat arts that can defeat species twice their size and 3 times their strength. Vorin moved closer to Doyan, and the human felt the warmth of the Master's energy. I will recommend that Earth's classification be changed immediately. No longer developing, no longer protected like children who cannot care for themselves. Your world will be recognized as what it truly is, a planet of warriors who chose to hide their strength until it was needed. Doyan felt something shift in his chest. Pride, not just for himself, but for his grandmother, for his family, for all the generations that had trained and prepared and waited. There is one more thing, Vorin said. The Council has asked what phrase should be added to Earth's new classification. Something to warn others about what your species is capable of. I have thought about this carefully. The Master's voice carried weight that seemed to fill the entire room. I will recommend the following classification: Earth. Status: recognized warrior species. Special notation: do not provoke. 1 week later, Doyan stood in the Academy's main courtyard, the same place where he had practiced alone every night. But he was not alone now. A small group of students had gathered around him. Beings from 6 different species, all watching as he demonstrated basic forms. The first principle, he said, moving through the opening stance of water flowing over stone, is that strength is not the only path to victory. Understanding your opponent is more valuable than overpowering them. Among the watching students was Kalaz, his Soren roommate who had become his first friend at the Academy. There were also 2 Velith who had asked to learn after watching his match recordings. There was even a young Croxon, a female who had been horrified by what Torak had done and wanted to understand how the human had defeated him. Doyan taught them the way his grandmother taught him, slowly, patiently, with attention to every detail. The forms looked simple, but each one contained depths that took years to fully understand. In his room that night, Doyan wrote a letter to his grandmother. Paper letters were rare in the age of instant communication, but his family had always believed that some messages deserved the weight of physical form. Dear grandmother, he wrote, I have done what you asked. The galaxy knows now. They know that we are not weak, not helpless, not prey. They know that humans have teeth and claws of our own, even if they cannot see them. The Council has changed our classification. They call us a warrior species now. They added a warning to our entry in their databases: do not provoke. He paused, looking out at the alien stars through his window. I have begun teaching others. Just as you taught me, and your teacher taught you, and his teacher taught him, the knowledge of 9 generations will not stay hidden anymore. It will spread. It will grow. And one day, when Earth truly needs defenders, there will be humans across the galaxy who carry our family's art in their hands and hearts. He finished the letter with the words his grandmother ended every training session with. Words passed down through their family since the beginning. We are small. We are soft. We are human. And that has always been enough. Across the galaxy, in homes and barracks and training halls, beings of 100 species watched the recording of his match and wondered what else humans were hiding. Some felt fear. Some felt curiosity. Some felt a new respect for the small, soft creatures from the backwater planet called Earth, and somewhere in Busan. In a small training room that smelled of old wood and sweat, an 83-year-old woman read her grandson's letter and smiled. The galaxy had finally learned the truth. Humans were not prey. They never had been.